Every family has their ups and downs, but this family in particular, the Watts family to be exact, have a very interesting story. Christopher and Shanann Watts married in 2012 and had two daughters, Bella and Celeste. They lived a pretty average life according to the world's view of a family in today's society. Shanann spent most of her time documenting her family's life on Facebook, so when everything went down, people were confused, seeing as their lives seemed so perfect on the internet. Shanann Watts was dealing with serious health issues when she met Chris through social media, so he was sort of her light in the darkness of it all. Everyone who knew them spoke highly of their family and didn't really have much bad to say. Of course, they fought like every married couple does, but in June of 2018, things started to get a little bit more real. Chris worked at an oil site for Anadarko Petroleum in Denver, Colorado. While there, he met his soon-to-be mistress, Nicole Kessinger. In his interview with People magazine about a year after his conviction, he stated that Nicole had everything that Shanann didn't to him. So throughout this time, Chris is seeing Nicole while still tending to his wife and kids at home. On June 27th, Shanann took her daughters on a 5-week trip to North Carolina to see family while Chris stayed home for work. On July 4th weekend, Chris invited his mistress into his home while his family was away to stay with him. His mistress knew about Shanann and their children, but according to police statements that she made to the police, he had told her that he was working on getting a divorce and his wife didn't mind him seeing other women. While Shanann was away, Chris didn't talk to her much, nor did he check in on the kids, which obviously concerned her. There is evidence of very hostile messages between the couple discussing his sudden loss of interest in her and their children. On July 14th, Chris took Nicole to a car museum and avoided all phone calls from his wife, causing even more issues between the couple. On the night of Kessinger and Watts' dates, there is evidence of explicit photographs that were exchanged back and forth between the two, which he kept stored on a secret calculator app, according to evidence reports. In the end of July, Watts took his mistress on another trip to Great Sand Dunes National Park before he left to go visit his family in North Carolina. Before he left, he gave a love letter to Kessinger discussing their future together and all that he had planned for them as an official couple. It's shown here. On July 31st, Chris rejoined with his family in North Carolina, and the reunion, of course, wasn't very sweet because Shanann was still so upset about how he had been avoiding her for the last month or so. The Watts family visited Chris's parents in August, and Chris's parents did not like Shanann, so of course there was another fight. Shanann was upset because, according to sources, Chris's mother tried to give their daughters food that she knew they were severely allergic to, and Chris didn't defend her in the situation. On the night of Chris and Shanann's fight, there were phone reports pulled that Chris made a call to his mistress, and her phone records show her searching wedding dresses and venues for the next few hours after the call was made. Shanann confided in a close friend about her issues with Chris and how he had been so distant, and she wasn't sure how she was going to tell him she was pregnant again with her third child. After telling Chris the news of their baby boy on the way, he still seemed as if he didn't have a care in the world, so she canceled all of the events surrounding the celebration of the baby's birth. At this point, the couple began seriously discussing separation. On August 8th, Shanann had a deep talk with Chris about her feelings, and he seemed to really care and listen to what she had to say, so when she left for her business trip to Arizona the next morning, she had high hopes for their marriage finally looking up. While she was away, Chris began to act distant again, sharing that he felt as if they had fallen out of compatibility. Shanann was devastated and began to suspect a possible affair. On August 11th, Chris unexpectedly hired a babysitter and told Shanann that he was going to a Colorado Rockies game. Later that night, Shanann checked their bank records, and it showed that he had been at a sports bar all night in Erie, Colorado, with Kessinger, of course. Shanann then decided that when she got home, she was going to lay out all of her feelings and confront him about a possible affair. On August 13th, Shanann arrived at home early in the morning. This is the last sighting of her entering her home with the security cameras. Chris wrote in his confession that he and Shanann had gotten into a fight because she accused him of an affair. He wrote that he had just snapped and then strangled her to death. The sound of Shanann's struggle woke their oldest daughter, Bella, so she came into the room wondering what was wrong. Chris then wrapped Shanann's body and put it in the back of his truck along with his daughters. The neighbor's surveillance footage shows Chris loading up his truck around 5:30 in the morning, which he usually did before work every day. So in the beginning of the search, his alibi checked out at first glance. He later told police that when he got them into the truck, He drove them to the oil site where he worked and buried Shanann in a shallow grave in a field. He then took Bella and Celeste to the two oil tanks shown here and smothered them to death and put them in their bodies in separate oil tanks. Evidence shows that around the time after he was suspected to have left the oil site, he made a call to his mistress and then to a real estate agent about putting their house up for sale. While Chris was disposing of the bodies and headed home, his neighbor and Shanann's best friend called the police and reported her missing. When police arrived, they checked with Chris and he told them that they must have left and went for a drive and she had forgotten her phone because they had fought the night before. Upon further investigation, the Watts neighbor's security camera footage disproved Chris's story that she had left with the girls while he was at work, making him the main suspect. In an effort to keep up an act, Chris made missing persons flyers and even did a news segment discussing the disappearance of his family and begging for their return. On August 15th, Chris was taken into custody for questioning. He took a polygraph test and failed. The test revealed to them that he had a mistress and led them to begin questioning if he was involved in the murder. After long hours of trying to keep up an innocent act, Chris confessed and told the police where to find the bodies. The next day, Shanann, Bella, and Celeste Watts' bodies were found at the oil site. On November 6th, Chris Watts pled guilty to 3 first-degree murder charges and 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body. The judge sentenced him to 3 life sentences without the chance of parole. On November 15th, Chris's mistress finally spoke out to the public and said that she was not involved in anything, telling People magazine that he lied about everything. On September 30th, 2020, Netflix released a documentary about the Watts family called American Murder Story: The Family Next Door. This relit the fire surrounding the story, and because of the press and the documentary was receiving and the death threat letters to Watts, he was moved to a prison in Wisconsin for safety purposes. So in conclusion, Chris Watts is still living as well as he could be, considering he is in a high-security facility until the day he dies. No one truly knows if the mistress was involved or if the story he told was completely true, but all we know and need to know is that he is behind bars serving a well-deserved sentence for the horrible crime that never should have happened in the first place.